So the people on the panel, I'm going to introduce them very quickly, and then I'm going to let them introduce themselves because they'll do it better than me. Dean Mahoney, to my right. So hello, Dean.
Hi, everyone.
Dean is the general manager of Focus Music, which is a Camden company that you might not have heard of. Focus serves the media industry worldwide for more than 20 years in films, TV shows and ads across the world, and they provide all the original music for ads and films and TV, that kind of thing, and have 4 different production labels in addition to an extensive library of music, and they create music as well, they produce it, so they are a publisher and copywriting, rights, ownership, file sharing, the future of music distribution, that kind of thing. That's what Dean is here to give an opinion on, because that's his world, and it's a very rapidly changing world. So Dean, we hope you have the answers.
I'll give it a go.
Okay, cool. And to Dean's right is Stephen White. Stephen is a music exec, and is the director of his own artist and producer management company, the One Fest Festival, Damon Albarn's Africa Express project. He's also a partner in NH7 Weekender festivals in India, and he manages artists including Dry the River. So welcome, Stephen. Hi.
Hello.
To my immediate left, we have Joe Hutchinson, who is the CEO of Camouflage Records. I'm going to just go through the full roster here, Joe. You have a degree in recording arts. You're sound engineering at SAE. Started a band called Où est le swimming pool? Worked in a film studio, adding sound to Hollywood movies, toured the world, concurrently setting up a record label, went platinum all around the world, have a record label, obviously we said that, Camouflage Recordings, 5 young artists currently, all starting to get regular BBC Radio 1, BBC 6 music play, and a staff of 12. So Joe's here from the new talent grassroots, getting started in an old industry, this part of town, that kind of perspective. And to his left we have Mark Jones.
Hi. Hi.
Mark's path through the last 20 years leaves a trail of artist careers, great records and legendary parties in his wake. If there was ever a man who was in the right place at the right time, it's Mark Jones. Do you agree?
Planets collide, stars align.
Nice. Mark Jones was, I'm going to have to say this, on the cover of Just 17.
I'm going.
Is that right? You were in a boy band, weren't you? How often do you get brought up every time we're on
It
a
wasn't
cover?
a boy band, it was a rock band.
A pop rock band.
Rock.
Yeah. That's sorry, I gave away the punchline.
Yes. I was in a band, yes.
Wall of Sound, which is a record label. That's Mark's baby. Bright Sock. There's Rhythm Digital, which you were just hearing as you came in, the propeller heads. He's also a BBC Radio 6 DJ, and still getting feverishly hot under the collar about new artists and music. Spending time with Wall of Sound is like being in an epic road movie without a map, and no road, according to Banksy. Say hi, Mark.
Hi, Mark.
So, now that I've introduced you, would you like to just briefly introduce yourselves and the perspective of which you're bringing to the discussion? Who would like to go first? Should we start with you, Dean? Let's start with Stephen. Let's go along.
Okay, well, if the perspective is something to do with Camden, I guess.
Yes.
It's included. I've been a Camden resident for 30-something years. My office has more often than not been in Camden. I had my first office over in Primrose Hill on Regent's Park Road, on Gloucester Avenue, and then moved over to Regent's Park Road, where I shared the offices with Creation Records, and then latterly I was involved in bringing a company called Channel Fly together, and we ended up owning the Jazz Cafe and the Barfly clubs and the Borderline and various other things. So we've had a long history and association with Camden, from when literally there was only like 1 or 2 sweaty old pubs playing music to where it is today. But what I spend my time doing is managing artists, which was once upon a time quite a simple, straightforward endeavour. I liken it to flying a 4-seater plane. You know, there's like 25 to 30 controls that you actually had to know how to do to take off and land a plane and fly from A to Z. But now it's more like flying a jumbo jet in terms of the amount of information as a manager that you have to take into account, and also the amount of skills that you have to employ in order to really make an impact on an artist's career. So that's something we can talk about. I also manage and run and book festivals. I have one here in Wiltshire and 4 of them in India. And then for my spare time, I run a project with Damon Albarn, as you mentioned, called Africa Express, when we get Western artists collaborating with African artists. We take them over to Africa, the more interesting parts, in my humble opinion, places like the Congo, Nigeria, Ethiopia, and of course Mali, where we went in October, and we took Brian Eno and Metronomy and Django Django and even Idris Elba, and we made an album there in a week. So we're involved in production side of things, artist management side of things, and the live event side of things.
Brilliant, thanks Steve. Dean?
Yeah, so Focus has been in the Camden area for about 20 years. We're currently based just up by the Roundhouse at the Chalk Farm, but the business has been in and around Camden since it started. And what we do very specifically is we write and produce music for television and film and for advertising. So we don't sell any music to the general public, we only sell it to the media. So we're in a very kind of niche area of the music business. And what we do is we take songs, instrumental music from local artist bands, from writers, composers. We have about 200 of them, and we have about 20,000 songs that we own the copyright to. We publish that copyright, and we try and sell that to as many different TV networks, production companies, advertising agencies as we can. We do it around the world. We have agents all over the world in 35 countries. So they sell our music to their media markets. So we're always looking for new music, we're always looking for current contemporary music styles. We cover every genre of music, from classical to pop to electronic to dubstep, the whole thing. We work with a lot of famous musicians who in their downtime are writing music for us. We're always looking, as I say, for new people to come and write for us. It's getting increasingly hard to kind of keep hold of the copyrights, and that's what we do. We try and manage these copyrights so that they earn money for everybody, for the writers and for us. And in the digital world, and in the world of YouTube and Google, that's getting harder and harder to do. So maybe that's something we'll talk a bit about, how we embrace this technology but still pay the people that made it, which is really, really important for us.
Yeah, we will touch on that. Away you go, Joe.
I'd like to talk more from the perspective of an artist, I suppose, starting out. And I wanted to start with a quote from a mutual friend of ours, I believe, a man called Eddie Temple Morris, who's an XFM DJ. Responsible for giving many of the bands we know and love their first break at radio. And a few years ago, his uncle, who's a businessman, had said to him, explain the industry, I hear it's in turmoil. And his answer to this was, he thought for a moment and said, well, imagine you have a restaurant but you're not allowed to charge for the food. What do? Increase the price of drinks, charge for the use of cutlery, charge entry on the door. I think it's important to appreciate that people won't buy your music, but they will come to your shows, they'll buy your t-shirts. Really just start to look at opening up other revenue streams, use the music as a vehicle to sell whatever else you can.
Nice. Mark?
What do you want me to say?
Just introduce yourself in your own words and what kind of stuff that you want to touch on.
Okay, my name is Mark Jones. I am who I am, basically. That's it. After going through the artist thing and doing all that, I learned the other side of the industry and started Wall of Sound Records 20 years ago. It's the anniversary this year. And it's been a very interesting journey in seeing the involvement and the changes in how things work now with the digital revolution, etc., etc. So it'd be good to discuss that.
Yeah.
And obviously, from an artist perspective, it's a different perspective. Obviously, when I'm finding new talent now, I'm saying, right, I'm your manager, I'm your publisher, and I'm your record label. Because it's 360. Well, I don't call it 360, I call it 720 because I'm going around in circles.
And we're going to open it to questions as well at some point, so
That'll be good.
Yeah, keep it interactive. So let's start at the beginning. How did you all get into this business? Was it?
Well, I started as a guitar player, which I still do, but only for fun these days. But that was my background, so I was in a band and had the record deal and that kind of stuff. Didn't really work out, usual story. So then I had to get a proper job, so I ended up working in advertising. So I did that for quite a while and wanted to get back into music, and this area of music, which is producing music for media, is a kind of mixture of the two. So it's a bit of music and it's a bit of kind of advertising. So that's how I got here. It's a bit of a business side and a bit of a music side.
Stephen, when you first came 30 years ago, you said there was nothing.
Well,
there was just a few pubs, grungy pubs. I mean,
yeah.
did you feel it coming up around you, or what was it like?
Yeah, I mean, I first roadie. I started off as a roadie in the mid-70s. First ever band I roadied for was Motorhead at their very first gig. And the second band I roadied for was the Pink Fairies at the Roundhouse, right, in 1975. And that was quite an experience. They were a psychedelic rock band. And Motorhead was supporting as well. And they had a huge, great 6-foot spliff hanging above the stage, which in the middle of the set, they exploded and out popped 500 Mandrax tablets and spread across the floor of the Roundhouse, and everybody had to go and grab those. And if you've seen Wolf of Wall Street, you know what those things can do. So that was an interesting entree to the music business age 15. But yeah, I mean, at that time, really, the Roundhouse was really the focus of music in Camden. In the 60s, it had hosted everybody from Hendrix through to Pink Floyd. The UFO Nights, UFO Club, which was the first psychedelic rock club, was based there. Then the Ramones, I remember playing their first gig there in 76, Talking Heads, and all the way through, and then of course it went dark in the 80s and the early 90s until it reopened to be the incredible place that it is today, and contribute something amazing. But yeah, I mean, Camden in those days was edgy. I mean, it was squats. Everything was squats around here. You know, you've seen With Nail and I. You know what Camden was like in the 70s, don't you? So it was genuinely like that.
Nice. Mark.
And there was a lot of gigs in the squats. That's what was happening. I suppose that's kind of quite similar to what goes on today. Really.
Mark.
Yes?
When you, after the boy band era, you were part of the acid house movement, right?
Well, no, I was doing that before, actually. So it's funny you should say that with the board behind, because I did the visuals at the first ever Shum, which was, you know, the first acid house clubs and Trip and Sin. And at the first ever Shum, we built a 12-foot cardboard X with a hole for the DJ to put his head through and DJ. It's quite interesting. Yeah, no, I did that, but you couldn't really correlate or associate the two of those things together at the time, i.e. writing pop songs and music and electronics. They weren't, you were always put in a box, genre-wise. Obviously that has evolved and changed a bit more now. But yeah, so they were disassociated. So, you know, yes, I went off to do the band thing after doing all the visuals and the club thing.
You hear a lot of people saying how hard it is these days. How, you know, your label's fairly fresh, isn't it, Joe?
Yes.
Yeah. How old is it?
It's a few years old. We were in a position where we had offers from a lot of major record labels, which were very draconian to our mind. Like the deals, I mean, money doesn't come for free, and the deals were terrible. We had a really good lawyer. We were interested in the.
Are you in a band? Speaking to the mic.
We were interested in setting up our own label, you know, running things ourselves, and our lawyer helped find. We did a deal with a distribution company, but essentially that funded our own label, and it meant it was a lot of work, but we gave about 20% away for distribution, and they helped finance. Plus, I mean, the deals with the majors were the reverse of that, really, where, you know, it's the artists we had taken 10-20%, so it's a lot of work, but it seemed like the way to go.
Are you in the position that Mark was talking about, where you're doing everything, the whole 360, you know, where you're managing, you're promoting,
yeah, like mothering, like literally doing everything for artists, and I think that's just the way it's always been for me, really. So I have a management company and a label that cross over, and you know, I build their websites, I do their graphic design, I master their records. You know.
Dean, you have. I mean, you're nurturing new talent, right? You're creating the music that you're selling to these companies. So there are quite a lot of crossovers.
Yeah, what we're trying to do is find talent. You know, people who are really good at writing for various reasons, but we're trying to make the licensing of that music really simple for TV stations and TV production companies, so that we can then get it into the programs, get it played as many times as possible, and earn the royalty income from that. And so everything we do is based around trying to produce quality music, record music really well, produce it as best we can, but then package it and sell it in a way that will get used all around the world by people who are making media content. So, you know, where I differ is that I'm not trying to sell any music to the public, but we're trying to produce the best music we can and sell it for the best price we can.
And that whole media platform now is a massive part in breaking an artist. I mean, that review is great in that magazine, that play on the radio or that playlist is what it is, but it's now about that media platform that you can bring. And when I think about now, all the syncs and all the ads and things we did back in the day, and I just gave it all away or threw this there or whatever, now, that's what it's about. It's about the media platform.
Yeah. Do you think that the consumers they don't feel that there's any real value in music anymore because of the internet?
Well, there's a generation now who have no value of what music is. They buy into the brand of something, and from that perspective. But it's
I don't think a digital file necessarily has a massive value attached to it. You know, where you have something tangible. People buy cassette tapes.
Can you show it to me?
Because it's
the digital file.
It's worthless.
Well, oh right, it doesn't exist.
I think definitely the exposure is the valuable thing, isn't it? And that's why I think being open to things like YouTube and Spotify, even though you don't get very much money back for them, is a good thing. And like we were just talking about Google's new content ID scheme, means that now when people upload our music and monetize it, they can actually track it, and we, as the original content creator, can be paid for our work.
This is what we're grappling with, as a music publisher. We want to embrace these new ways of sharing music, but we want to get paid for it, and we want the creators to get paid for it. People that wrote it and composed it and recorded it and put their love and effort into it. We want them to get paid. So we want to embrace it, we want to use it, we want to go with where culture's going. But we've got to look after the creators of the music, otherwise it's bad for all of us.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a big ongoing debate in the music business right now. I'm a member of the Music Managers Forum, on the board of the Music Managers Forum, which is a collective of managers who aim to talk to government, talk to the industry about issues that face featured performers and of course managers. But the debate about what people are earning from Spotify, what people are earning from YouTube. The point is that everything is moving towards a streaming culture. Downloads will be gone, but we've just seen Apple buy Beats, and they bought it primarily because they're buying the Beats. It's not just the headphones they're buying; it's the Beats streaming service, which has already been set up, so they can with an identity that is slightly different from iTunes.
It was $3 billion or something, wasn't it? £3 billion deal or something?
£3 billion deal.
That's crazy. But no hardware involved at all, just the platform.
No. They're buying the headphone brands as well. Which is like they're buying the whole thing. But it's going to be, let's see how this develops. I mean, it's a bit too early to tell. But the point I'm making is that the world is moving completely towards streaming. The current generation and the one to come in 5 years' time, that is the only thing that they will know. That and vinyl, right? So if you want to buy something, you're going to be buying vinyl, and if you want to listen to something on demand, you're going to be streaming. The point is that there is potential for growth and more money for all artists than there is right now. If you think about it, that if we've got 30 million households in this country, and 30 million households who might be prepared to pay $3 or $4 per month, right, for a streaming service. If you work that out, and if you only take a fraction of that as the actual cash generation, it's a hell of a lot bigger a music market than it is right now just from selling downloads. So the potential there for something really, really significant is coming, that is kind of an earth movement.
But do you feel like the infrastructure is being put in place for one company to rule overall? Or do you think they
Well, at the moment, Google and YouTube is where people really discover their music. I mean, the other platforms, Deezer, Audio, Spotify particularly, which is an amazingly user-friendly platform, have an impact. But, I think if you look at your own life, you're probably discovering, music through links on YouTube more often than not, you know. So it's about, how those platforms, the revenue is distributed more equitably with artists.
And also, I think it's important to look at how that the music listener kind of continues their journey from YouTube or from. I heard an interesting talk at Spotify recently where they were teaming up with Topspin, who you can sell merch through, and so people can listen to your stream on Spotify. You're probably not getting paid anything for it, but then next to it, there's your T-shirt for sale. So making sure that people who enjoy your music for free have a way to contribute something to your career.
Can I just ask a question to the audience?
Please.
How many people in this room recently bought an album, a physical album?
That's quite
More than I
I
expected,
thought.
yeah.
That's more than I expected.
How many people who actually work in the music industry to some degree?
Okay.
Oh, pretty much everyone. Cool. Well, while we're on the subject of publishing, I'm going to open it up to you guys. If anyone's got any questions, then we'll move on to something else. So has anyone got anything as music industry people you want to ask them?
If Spotify, why do artists get such a shit deal?
Why
if
do
they're
artists?
making so much, why do they get so much comeback? So many people, you get like the artists now having like 40 million plays or whatever. Even the smaller artists, you get your million plus or whatever, that have never had a hit. So why do they? Oh right. Sorry. Why do they get a bad deal? Why is that deal so bad for artists?
Well, it's because it's a new technology that's evolved, right, and based on old contracts. So it's not, it's a hybrid between a radio play and a download, in a sense. But it's a new technology, and often that's not really covered in the agreements with the record company. So if an artist is signed to a record company, the record company is applying an old system to it, where they say, it's effectively as an artist you're earning 10% or a tenth of what the label is receiving. So the label is receiving the lion's share of money. Spotify are paying what they're paying. In fact, they're paying quite a decent rate. It's 0.07 per stream, right? But if it was split up a bit more equitably between the partners, and that includes the music publishers as well and the songwriters, because it's the artist is the recording. Is the recording, the song is the song. The artist may have written the song, but somebody else may have written a song, right? So everybody really should be getting a share, and at the moment the publishers are causing a stink because they're getting such a tiny share. So it's moving, there is a long way to go in terms of how this is going to get settled. But the good news for new artists is, who own their own recordings and their own copyrights, if you upload your stuff to Spotify, and you're getting played, you will earn 100% of that money. So you're earning effectively 10 times the rate that an artist who's signed to Sony or Warner's will earn from that stream. So that's another factor, another spoke in the wheel of the whole movement in terms of the DIY culture that has once again come round to become something meaningful and viable. That doesn't mean that everybody is right for that. Certain people are more entrepreneurial and they can create their own label identity, create their own marketing, create their own ways of reaching the public and connecting with an audience. But other people need the power of a label. They need the team of a label behind them. Some labels are paying 50-50 on streaming, okay? But they're now beginning to realise, oh shit, we shouldn't have offered that, right? Because it doesn't work for them. Beggars Banquet, who have been paying 50-50 on streaming, I don't know about Glassnote, I think they're paying 50-50 on streaming, Domino maybe as well. They're moving towards a model where they're going to be paying less. I think that's certainly coming, right? They're going to be making announcements. I nearly let the cat out of the bag there. They're going to be making announcements about that shortly. And one can understand that in a sense, because if the vast majority of income is going to come through streaming, and they're making the big investments they actually have to make in order to sell music, then they need to get a greater share of that. But this is going to be an ongoing debate over the next 2 or 3 years. In fact, it's going to be the ongoing debate over the next 2 to 3 years. And if you're interested, if you're a manager, for instance, I suggest strongly you go and join the Music Managers Forum, get involved in that. You'll become a part of that debate, and you'll also be informed before anybody else does. If you're an artist, you should join the Featured Artists Coalition, who are allied to the Music Managers Forum, run by people like Billy Bragg and a whole variety. Sandy Shaw is the chairman. That they disseminate fantastic information. You've got a question about this?
Yeah, I've got a question. Thank you. Given what you said about other record labels and publishers realising there's possibly their loss with getting a 50-50 cut, what would you do, given that fact?
That's a good question. We're looking at that now, and starting to think about what is the most fair way of actually, carving up that pie,
I thought that would be 50-50.
Well, you would think so, between the art, but then you've got to take into account the music publishers as well and the songwriters. So, to be honest, my personal view is it might be 25% for the between 25 and 50% for the artists, and between 25 and 50% for the labels and the publishers. But it's not as clear cut as that. It's going to take quite a bit of talking over the next few years. But the bottom line is Spotify pay over the money they pay over, and a lot of the artists' angst is they're not seeing those pennies coming through.
It's also worth. It's a good question. It's also worth remembering that this new model of we pay out £5 a month or whatever it is for Spotify, right? £10 a month. What is happening there? It's like a blanket agreement, right? So there are millions and millions of streams, but though the pot of money to distribute is the pot of money, right? So it might be a big pot, but we're all paying our fivers. We're not paying extra for the more that we stream, right? So we can stream thousands and thousands of tracks and just pay £5 or £10, whatever it is. So that has a big impact on what gets paid out, because the more and more streams there are doesn't necessarily mean that the income is going up. Right? So this is a new way of how music is consumed, and that has an effect on how it's paid out. Right? It's a different model to downloading it and paying the 79 pence and owning the file. I listen to Spotify all the time. We probably all do. Right? So I don't know how much I'm streaming, but it's hundreds of thousands of tracks every month probably. And that's going to have an impact on how it's divided. The pot is only so big.
Any more questions on publishing and that kind of stuff? Cool. Let's get a bit more personal now that we've got the business out of the way. I'm interested, considering the combined experience, who have been the most enjoyable acts to work with in your experience?
What ones we've worked with personally?
Personally, yeah.
The most enjoyable? They're all bastards. What are you talking about? No, that's not true. Historically, I suppose like when you first get in the industry, you're just grateful to be able to work with anybody who's actually going to pay you some money for working with them. So, going out on the road with bands and punk bands when I was a kid, even though they used to abuse me because, well, I don't want to talk about that, being locked in a cupboard, but because I had long hair and they didn't. But that's still those sort of vital, incredible days and amazing. But just as a generic, I've often found that the artists who are the biggest artists, literally the biggest artists, and I've been lucky enough to work with some of them, including people like Santana and Madonna and all sorts of people, were often the nicest to work with, the most sort of genuine, and who had managed to create a persona around them that they were just calm, and their ego did not get satisfied by putting you down. It got satisfied by, making you feel good around them, So that's been something I've noticed over the years. That's not always true.
Well, that's a big question for me because I've worked with a lot of artists, and the reason I started the label was to give them a platform to do what they do, not try and change what an artist is, because I don't think that's the point. But obviously there's been a few, and I want to be inspired from that perspective and then to inspire people. So, obviously artists like Roixop, who were the biggest selling artist on the label. Very insular, you know, from Bergen in Norway, do their thing, etc., etc., very much in their way. But working recently, you know, doing the album with Grace Jones recently, is there any more of an inspiring person on earth than Grace Jones? Is there? Her bar is here, and that isn't the diva thing, which people confuse it with. It's just her target, and her bar is there. And even though, you know, I went through it, and the process of it, it was truly inspiring. And that is really important to drive you, especially in this time and generation and the way things are. They say never work with your heroes, but I just thought after it got to this point with the label, I just thought, fuck that. So I did the album with Grace and the album with the Human League recently as well. Yes. And, you know, pushing that on.
I just thought of a Camden connection that we both share is Heaven 17, who all live in Camden, even though they're a Sheffield band, they all live here, and they have done for 30 or so years. I used to manage them, and nicer guys you could not work with.
No, I recently did a BEF, British Electric Foundation album with Martin Ware, which was pretty incredible as well. So,
What do you think is the best work you've ever done?
For me, you know, we don't work with so many well-known names, but probably the best work that we've done on the most amazing day I've spent in this job is recording in Abbey Road and doing an orchestral recording in Abbey Road using the studio that the Beatles recorded in. That's pretty fantastic. You know, we had a good year, we could afford it, so, you know, we splashed out and recorded a whole orchestral album in there. That was pretty fantastic, just from a purely musical point of view.
Have you had any power hug, high five moments getting a label off the ground?
I was going to say, we actually recorded a piece of silent music which we released on Mark's record.
Which Wall of Sound released. I don't know. Does anyone know about that?
It was a cover of a
I didn't hear it.
well-known composer called John Cage. It was called 433.
Which we did as an anti-X Factor. Remember one, just to prove the point of music. So we got a number of artists in the studio.
Produced by Paul Epworth, wasn't it?
Paul Epworth produced it, but we did it as, was it 3.5 or 4.5? 4.5 minutes of silence.
At Scene Street Studios.
So we got them in a studio and they weren't allowed to speak. And the record went into the top 40.
You obviously weren't in the studio, Mark.
We got the record into the top 40 we got the record into the top 40 and we got some plays and I got numerous remixes done of 4.5 minutes of silence.
Wow.
I was going to mention that as being probably one of my favourite moments, actually.
I think for me the best actual project around making an album that I've ever been involved with was last October. I went to, as part of the Africa Express project, took Metronomy and Django, Brian Eno and Damon Albarn and Idris Elba, Holy Other, Ghost Poet and a few others, and we spent a week, 8 days in Bamako in Mali, and we made a recording there with 10 local Malian artists who'd never made any recordings before. Because there's been a war there for the last couple of years, and each producer had to go in with their laptops into a little schoolroom. We were dotted around this school, and we just brought a load of equipment over and had to record a track in a week. And that record came out on Transgressive for Record Store Day, double vinyl album, which sold out 2,000 copies in a day, which is pretty a good thing, you know. And all that money goes back to Mali. I mean, in terms of a satisfying project, that was immensely satisfying.
Yeah, I think the project on one of the... Is that my taxi? Okay. One of the projects that I really feel very strongly about that people may not know is an album I did 10 years ago called To Culture Clash, where I took all the electronic producers of the world to Jamaica and put them in studio with key Jamaican artists from now and then.
That's a great record.
And it was, shall we say, ahead of its time. Major Lazer is based on because I took them with it. That's basically with the project, but check it out because that's interesting.
What's your process for finding new artists? You said the stars aligned, but you're just wading through emails and A&R people coming up to you and throwing CDs in your door.
Things just happen with me, and that's how I believe it. And I have to believe in them, and the artist has to be themselves. I don't want to change an artist. They have to be themselves, and to give them a platform. I want to do the first of something, and for them to be an originator of a sound and a perspective. So that's how I look at it. But I've got to like it. And I love melody as well. I don't think pop has to be a 4-letter word. It doesn't have to mean shit. Just because you have a chorus or you have a melody that people remember, it doesn't have to mean, oh no, you know what I mean?
You're getting a lot of people coming to your demos, you're getting
I get
inundated.
more
loads.
now than ever, and obviously the online thing is such a different thing now.
That's why I was asking, because
there's so much to sort through.
Yeah, it's opened up that whole thing. It's a good thing in some ways because it's kind of democratised the process, so that anybody can make good music now because the technology exists. The problem is it's a double-edged sword because anybody can make bad music as well now.
That is the problem, being inundated, and how do you listen to everything? You just can't. It's absolutely impossible. So there's a serendipity involved. Like, you happened to listen to that bit of music at that particular time. You happened to walk into that club and see something, and you tend to, and that's still the really wonderful thing about this, that serendipity can bring, and I think, are we involved in creating some of that ourselves? Probably, but that can, move us into areas, and suddenly you get inspired and taken up by it, and you found something, and you want to run with it, and then you want to go and tell the rest of the world how amazing this thing that you found lying in the corner is.
And I think it's important for artists to be themselves, not to want to be somebody else, or try and,
Do you think that's rare? Do you think it's rare to find artists like that?
No, I think they're out there, but you've got to give people the belief in that. And that's what, if there's any artists in the room here or people that, that's a really important factor for me. And obviously the perspective of initially doing something different, which is what you have to do now, is to do something that's going to make people sit up and say, well, what's that? What's that? Doing something alternative in the beginning with the whole online basis.
So I feel like we're kind of coming towards the end. In terms of advice...
What, music or...?
Never, yeah. This is going to be silent music from now on.
Well, there you go.
You were just talking about advice you give to people starting out. I mean, what advice would all of you give to people in the audience or watching online?
Well, I think there's
be yourself.
And on a technical level, I mean, there exists now a lot more opportunities to learn in a formal way than there ever was before. That doesn't mean that if you get all that learning, you're necessarily going to be good at it. That's down to you. But I mean, the courses that the Music Managers Forum runs, the opportunities for funding, which a lot of them exists. There's lots of different ways that you can find bits of money here and there to go and fund your artists. And again, Managers Forum can help you tell you about that. But those exist in a way that perhaps they didn't before. That's the upside. The downside is there's many more people vying for your attention. So
yeah, I think my advice, which kind of links into what Stephen is saying, is know who you're going to pitch to. Research it. You pitch to the right people.
Pitch the right thing to the right
pitch
people.
the right thing to the right people. There's enough information about how the business works. Everybody's doing everything, like we were saying earlier. You're selling merchandise, you're managing the band. People can find out, who to pitch their music to. So pitch the right thing to the right people, because you waste a lot of time just blanket.
But it's all about the songs at the end of the day. If the songs are no good, forget it.
So be good. That's the main advice. Joe?
I just think there's so much that you can do yourselves these days, and obviously we're a big method AIM that can help the small labels with information. But I suppose outside of the music, the key things are press and radio, and you can find those contacts and you can approach those people and just do it in the right way, be succinct, and if the product's good, hopefully you get through to them. But even distribution, you can sign up to AWOL, which stands for Artists Without a Label, and they'll take care of your global distribution for you, and there's no cost to you there. They just take a commission on your earnings. And then you get 100% of the Spotify streams. But there's a lot that you can do yourself these days.
Cool. So have we got any more questions before we say thank you and good night? Everyone happy? All right. Well, let's give a big round of applause for everyone. Thanks for coming.